Well, I just finished Chapter 6 of the Book of Boba Fett, and I am still so stressed out. I feel like I made a wish on a monkey's paw, I got exactly what I wanted, and it may have cost me everything. I loved the title of the episode being such a good misdirect. From the desert comes a stranger. Oh great, Cobb Vanth is gonna help Boba Fett. I love that guy. He must be the stranger from the desert. And then with everything else going on, I forgot about the title until the very end of the episode when another stranger appeared, which was sick, but we'll get to that later. I loved this episode, but the Book of Boba Fett is shaping up to be a weird series. Last week I defended the choice to focus on the Mandalorian, and I compared it to an interlude in a book. We were still dealing with themes of change and reinvention, so it worked for me. But I wanted to get back to Boba's story this week, and we did, a bit. But we also spent so much time with Luke and Grogu, and don't get me wrong, I loved everything we got to see, but I no longer think I can call this an interlude. It's such a weird feeling because I loved the episode, it was a great Star Wars story, but it was definitely not a good Boba Fett story. And that's my one criticism. Now that's out of the way, so we'll get back to talking about all the great stuff. Right at the top, we got the return of Cobb Vanth, and I still love that character. Timothy Olyphant is the perfect choice to play him, and I don't know if I'll ever get over how cool it is that such a minor book character is now basically a household Star Wars name. Vanth chases off some Pykes from his territory by outdrawing and outshooting 3 of them. We see that the Pykes are attempting to expand their influence to take over all of Tatooine, not just Mos Espa, and we're reminded that Cobb is a classic Western lawman, fastest gun in Mos Pelgo. That'll become important later. He's also shown to be incorruptible. Given the chance to take enough spice to retire, he dumps it out. Then we head to some unknown planet with the Mandalorian, full of mountains and trees. We're picking up with Din's visit to his little friend, and from what it looks like, this is where Luke will one day have his Jedi temple that we see in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. Or maybe it's like a little prototype on a different planet, but I think the implication is that this is the first of many buildings to come. Din has to patiently wait while we cut to Luke meditating with Grogu, and Luke is looking great. I was iffy on his appearance in The Mandalorian, but I was nothing but impressed this time around. I liked seeing Grogu's meditation, and at least a little sliver of growth for him. A frog hops by, and you can see that he's tempted, but he lets it pass, and closes his eyes again. But then a second later he changes his mind and grabs it with the Force. He's still a child. He gets distracted. Luke kindly corrects him and then shows Grogu what he could really do if he lets himself truly connect with the Force. He picks up all the frogs. Grogu starts to see his potential if he takes his master's lessons to heart. They go on a walk together and discuss Yoda, and it's really nice to see Luke teaching a young member of the same species. It just feels circular and poetic and right. But Luke helps Grogu unlock his memories and his past, and we see a brief flashback of Order 66. 3 Jedi fall protecting Grogu, and we don't yet know how he escapes. I imagine we're gonna see that in another flashback down the line, but maybe we won't. I think the purpose of the scenes was to help Grogu face his trauma and his fears. In The Mandalorian Season 2, Ahsoka says that Grogu hid his abilities to survive after the fall of the Jedi. He has to overcome that fear that who he is and what he can do could be a danger to him. Luke helps him do exactly that and promises to teach him to protect himself. Speaking of Ahsoka, she pops up. I was not expecting that. She and Din have a talk and she convinces him that he wants to see Grogu not for the child's benefit, but for his own, because he misses him, and who wouldn't? But this part of the episode is all about the attachment of parental figures or teachers and their need to let go, to let their children or students become who they choose to be and not what is expected of them. When asked about why she is okay with Luke training Grogu when she refused, Ahsoka says it's because he chose to, and she can't control his choices. Ahsoka is Luke's senior. She was trained by his father and has known the Force for much longer. She thought training Grogu could be dangerous, and she's probably not wrong, but she also respects Luke enough to let him make that decision for himself. Din also has to learn to back off and let Grogu make his own choices without any outside influence. After he leaves, Luke continues Grogu's lessons in an extended training montage where he helps the child learn to jump again. It's a fun sequence, especially seeing Luke running around with Grogu in the backpack. Eventually, Grogu is running and jumping and defending himself against a training remote without help. I think we're to believe that means he's ready. He has relearned how to control the Force, even though it still seems to tucker him out. Seeing Luke and Ahsoka have a brief conversation was awesome. It's one of those things I kept not expecting to see because I didn't want to get my hopes up, and it's so crazy that it actually happened. I just wish it were longer. I think that's my main frustration with this stuff being in the Book of Boba Fett. I love that we're seeing it, but I think the scene could have been longer and had more time to breathe if it were part of The Mandalorian Season 3 or something else. But that's honestly a nice complaint to have. I was enjoying it so much that I wanted more. Luke asks Ahsoka if they'll ever see each other again, and she says perhaps, but I don't think we've seen the last conversation between the two of them. Also, as Ahsoka leaves this part of the story, I want to say again how great I thought Luke looked. Mark Hamill and Max Lloyd-Jones and everyone at ILM crushed it. I could really feel Luke's uncertainty about what to do with Grogu. And I'm gonna just go ahead and jump to the final scene of the episode to talk about Luke's decision, because it's perfect. He offers Grogu a choice, just like Ahsoka and Din discussed earlier. Luke has given him the tools he needs to wield the Force well enough to protect himself out in the galaxy. So now it's time to choose a code, Jedi or Mandalorian. As Din said, they are opposing creeds, but I love that Luke doesn't act like one is right and one is wrong. Just because he's a Jedi, he's not being pushy about it. He genuinely cares about what Grogu wants, and the episode ends on the question of what Grogu will choose. My guess is that he will choose to return to Din, to be a foundling rather than a Padawan, partially because we know the fate of Luke's Jedi Temple and I want Grogu out of there, and also because Din just got that little Grogu-sized compartment installed in his starfighter. I mean, come on, we're gonna see Grogu flying around in that thing sooner or later. For some story and thematic reasons, I think Grogu is a good illustration of the idea that there is no one way to be a Mandalorian, which is a lesson I think Din has to learn over the course of his own journey. But now let's go back to Tatooine. Boba Fett and his group are preparing for the war with the Pykes, and this is his one and only scene. Now that they've hired the Mandalorian, Finnick says they need foot soldiers, so Din heads off to Mos Pelgo, which is now called Freetown, to see if Cobb Vanth will help out. I like their discussion and the general outlook of the town, represented by the bartender, that they don't need to concern themselves with the problems of Mos Espa. It's not their fight. But Din correctly points out that it will become their fight eventually, whether they like it or not. It's very similar to some of the things Luke says in A New Hope. At first, he refuses to join Obi-Wan because the Empire isn't that big of a problem on Tatooine. That's reiterated in the deleted Tashi Station scenes with Biggs as well. Luke says the Empire doesn't care about Tatooine, but Biggs says one day they will. And of course, they come right to Luke's doorstep and kill his family. I like that even on Tatooine, people have that argument. The Pykes are only bothering Mos Espa, for now. Din leaves, and Cobb Vanth does see the wisdom of what he says, but before any major decisions can happen, from the desert comes a stranger. My god, that silhouette! I'm trying to remember who said it and when, but someone at Lucasfilm talked about how the most iconic Star Wars characters are recognizable by their silhouette alone, and the second you see that hat, if you know, you know. I have been wanting Cad Bane to appear in this series since episode 1. I thought he would be a great fit. Boba Fett was inspired by the Man with No Name from the classic westerns. Cad Bane was modeled after Angel Eyes from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He is the bad. And Cobb Vanth is the good, incorruptible, like I said before. That's why I felt like I'd made a wish on a monkey's paw, because I got Cad Bane, but I was so stressed out during that whole scene because I love Cobb Vanth, and I knew the whole point of showing how fast Cobb was at the start of the episode was so that we could see Cad Bane be even faster. So I was basically begging my TV not to let Cobb die the entire time. I wanted Cad Bane, but not like this. Not like this! My own feelings aside, his introduction was perfect. The voice is perfect. It's great to have you back, Corey Burton. I love that they're handling him basically the same way as Black Chrysanthemum. If you've never seen him before, he's just a badass Western alien dude. That's all you need to know. But if you've seen the Clone Wars, it makes everything even better. Bane tells Cobb Vanth to stay out of Pike's syndicate business, but we all know this is going to end in a shootout, and of course Bane wins against not just Cobb, but also the deputy. But it didn't matter that it all played out how I thought it was going to go in my head, because Dave Filoni's direction was fantastic in this scene. I was on the edge of my seat, just desperate to be wrong. He is continuing to improve as a live-action director, and I am thrilled about it. Bane tells the rest of the citizens of Freetown to just let the Pykes do their thing, but his interference here probably solidified their fight against the Syndicate. They see now that this isn't just city business. Just like Luke couldn't hide from the evil of the Empire, Freetown can't hide from the evil of the Pykes. And now they shot Cobb Vanth. Of course they're going to avenge him. Although it sounds like he probably survived. He was shot in the shoulder, and everyone was yelling about getting med packs and stims and stuff. He's not confirmed alive, but thankfully I don't think he's dead. Is that wishful thinking on my part? Absolutely. Do not take this from me. Then we cut to Garsa Fwip and the Sanctuary, and the Pykes freaking blow it up. I swear, if I lost Cobb Vanth and Max Rebo in the same episode, I will lose my damn mind. Although it looks like Max wasn't there that night, so that's good. But still, I owe an apology to Garsa Fwip. I was distrustful of her this entire series, but now it seems like she was actually on Fett's side. I assume this means the Pike War has begun. So hopefully next week we actually see some Boba Fett action. As much as I loved everything that happened in this episode, I'm starting to think the title of the series is just arbitrary. Like, I understand why they couldn't call this The Mandalorian Season 3, but the Book of Boba Fett doesn't seem to work quite right either. It's like this whole series has become a small interlude for The Mandalorian. Sure, most of the focus is on Boba Fett, but his story was straight up put to the side for an episode and a half. It was great seeing everything with Luke and Grogu, but I also would have loved to see some training with Boba and his Rancor. I mean, he's probably gonna ride that thing next week, right? And it seems like we're gonna go from, I want to ride it, to, look at me, I'm riding it, which seems like a jump. I don't know, the structure of this series is just very strange, that's all I'm saying. But overall, it's working for me. Cad Bane is here, the war with the Pykes is beginning, so let's see how this all plays out next week. But what did you think of Chapter 6? Let me know in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all our Book of Boba Fett coverage, and consider checking out our Patreon page for even more. We're releasing video reactions and audio commentaries for every episode as they come out. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.